And welcome to the Answers 42 podcast, your weekly look around the sports landscape and the hottest and biggest headlines across all major sports. We don't put ourselves in boxes here, we cover them all. This week, we will be covering NFL, MLB, NBA after our special Sunday where we got to talk about the beginning of training camp. And right before the trade deadline today, we'll be talking about the continuation of training camp, whether or not injuries are an issue, recapping who's the winners and losers of the MLB trade deadline, and giving some updates on the hottest story in the NBA right now, which is really the only story at this point, and that is the Damian Lillard trade request and demand to go to Miami. How is that going? How's it going to go? And where are we going to be, not just now, but in the future? We're going over all of those things. Let's go ahead and jump on into them and start off with go ahead and we're just going to jump into the Damian Lillard situation. For those of you that don't know what is going on, at the beginning of the offseason, right before the free agency period for the NBA, after the NBA finals that were won, yes, by the Nuggets, had to throw that out there. Damian Lillard did what nobody expected, and that is demand his way out of Portland. This is the only way that Damian Lillard was ever going to be traded. He has been that favorite son, the fan favorite, the prodigal son, however you want to encapsulate him in Portland. He has been that dude. He has been one of the most loyal players that we have ever seen in any sport. It's amazing that it's taken this long for this kid to finally get fed up when after a career year he set career highs in points per game, rebounds, steals, I mean, pretty much across the board, both offensively and defensively. The cat just went out and balled this past season. Obviously, that's not enough to take Portland or him to where he wants to go, which is that proverbial mountaintop and getting that NBA championship. He obviously sees that's not going to happen in Portland. Everybody expected them to do something drastic during the draft, maybe go out and take that number 2 overall pick that they ended up spending on Scoot Henderson and trading for a guy like Zion Williamson from New Orleans or something of that nature, just making that big splash to make Dave happy. They didn't. I said it on the day of the draft when I was asked during the draft special right here on 5280 Sports by the boss man Mike Spillane, was that does getting Scoot Henderson make Dame happy? I said it then, and I was obviously right. Stick with it now. It did not make him happy. I don't see how a veteran is happy about just simply getting another rookie that, regardless of his makeup and potential, unless it's a guy like a LeBron James or somebody like that that's just going to come in and completely change the franchise around. I didn't see how that was going to make a star like Damian Lillard happy. Obviously, I was correct. Shortly, about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks later, it was when he made the request, and he made it with a specific team in mind. That is Miami. So many in Miami were so excited, like, oh, we're going to get Dame. And it seemed like a foregone conclusion until things started getting messy. You had Damian Lillard's camp come out and essentially tell all other NBA teams, do not waste your time. Do not trade for Dame because he will not play for you. Then you had the Portland Trailblazers GM essentially call his bluff, well, like he should. Dame's under contract. There's nothing in that contract that prohibits them from trading him anywhere. There's no trade clause. There's nothing within the wording that can be construed into giving Dame any real leverage. Now, this is the NBA. This isn't like the Major League Baseball or football where the star doesn't really have any type of leverage in these situations, as you've seen with like Jonathan Taylor up in Indianapolis with the Colts. He's demanded a trade or getting paid. The Colts say, we're not going to do either, and we're going to put you on the pup list. You're not going to get paid, and you're just going to sit there and wallow in your own pity until you decide you want to play and make some money. In the NBA, you're not going to see a team do that because there's so much more of a dynamic with a single player being able to change the outcome of a team and a game the way that you can in the NBA, which is how few players are out on the court. multiplies the impact of each and every player out there. And then when you're talking about a superstar, that's multiplied even further. So while there is some gravitas in saying that Dame has power and he can exude it and things, there is a certain limit to that as well. Because as we've seen already just recently with the NBA going and sitting down with Damian Lillard and essentially like, hey, look, bruh, you're going to play wherever you go. You signed a contract. You're getting close to $50 million a year. Sit down, shut up, and do your job. That's a very, very boiled down version of what they did. They obviously came much with much more tact and pomp and circumstance when it comes to the NBA and how they brought it to Dame Lillard. But that's what it boils down to. They really just kind of doubled down and had the back of the GM of the Portland Trailblazers. Like, hey, look, man, we're going to trade you wherever it is that works out best for Portland, not necessarily just where it works out best for Damian Lillard. And that's really kind of where we sit. We sit in a catch 22 and for lack of a better phrase, a Mexican standoff. You have two powerhouses looking at each other and seeing who blinks first. To me, I believe it's going to be Dame Lillard. As much power and influence that NBA players have and how much more they have than in other places, you just saw it with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. They both made a stink. They got out of where they wanted to get out of. But I guarantee you that Dallas and Phoenix were not the places either one of those players wanted to go. They were happy to go there because they are contenders and they already had some talent. Kyrie with Luca in Dallas, and then you had the whole supposed super team that got mollywopped by the Denver Nuggets in the playoffs this past off season or past postseason there in Phoenix with Durant and used to at the time it was Chris Paul. Now it's Bradley Beal um, eh, and Devin Booker and all of those guys down there in Phoenix. But again, I can guarantee you those were not the destinations either one of those players wanted. But they knew that even with their power and influence that got them into Brooklyn in the first place, they lost a lot of it when they made that trade request demand because at that point it's on the team to do what's best for the team. It's no longer worrying about what's best for Damian Lillard or what's best for Kevin Durant or what's best for Kyrie Irving. It is what is best for the team. And I believe this is going to work out in the same ilk of the Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving trade. It is going to drag on. We are not going to have any type of a conclusion to this soap opera by the time the season starts in October. This might drag on all the way to the trade deadline where a team gets desperate. It's either going to be during training camp where a big star gets hurt or a team that was counting on a certain player, they get hurt, and then all of a sudden they're pressed up against the wall and they got to go out and find somebody to replace that person. And it's Dame Lillard sitting out there. They'll go out and pay the farm, so to speak, to go and get them. That's the soonest I see this playing out. But more likely, we're going to be talking about this all the way up until the trade deadline. A lot like Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, who both, just like Damian Lillard last year, made a demand shortly after the offseason kicked off, and we didn't see them traded until almost the 11th hour of the trade deadline. I don't know if it'll be exactly that dramatic or that crazy because I don't think there's as much machinations in it. But I'm also every day that we do not see Damian Lillard in South Beach is a day that is less and less likely that he will ever be in South Beach. I'm at the point where I'm starting to doubt that he will actually end up in Miami. No matter how much he wants it, no matter how much he pushes it, I just don't see how Miami is going to be able to outbid, even with making multiple team trades where it's a 3 or 4 team trade. I just don't see Miami having enough to secure Dame Lillard with enough given back for the Portland Trailblazers GM to pull the trigger. It is going to have to be an earth shattering trade and one that gets them back into contention sooner rather than later in the ilk of teams like Cleveland and Brooklyn and places of that nature that have had similar situations where they've had to get rid of big name stars and got a lot in return. It is going to have to be that way. It's not just simply that Miami's going to just be able to make up whatever package they decide that they can afford and then just throw it at Portland and Portland has to take it because that's what Dame Lillard wants. If that was the case, it would already be done. So if you fans of Miami Heat are sitting back here holding your breath for a Dame Lillard trade, stop it because more than likely you're going to suffocate before you ever get what you want. Just sit down, sit back, relax, and just ignore the noise. Because at this point, you're going to drive yourself nuts. There's no point in daily, Google searches of what's going on with the Dame Lillard trade. When something significant happens, I promise you will not be able to avoid it. You are not going to be out of the know because you didn't spend all of Monday, August 7th or 6th or whatever Monday is, and looking up Dame Lillard trade rumors. You're not going to glean anything new at this point. Nothing is going to happen that's going to be a telltale sign of any kind until the final straw is pulled, until the trade is made. There's nothing left out there to analyze. At this point, it is just a matter of can Miami create a big enough package to entice Portland, or does it become another team's essential bag to grab? That's where it's going to come down to is whether or not Miami can bring up enough pieces to be compelling. If they can't, Dame's not going to Miami. And again, at this point, just looking through what they have left after the absolutely pathetic offseason they've had. I mean, let me go ahead and run down what the Miami Heat have done. They have added Jamari Booyah. I don't know how to say his name as a free agent. None of you know who that is, so don't even try and pretend. Thomas Bryant would only be um, even ring a bell if you were a diehard Lakers or Nuggets fan. He was the third string center on the Nuggets when it came to the playoffs. Young kid, lots of potential, athleticism, size, all that good stuff. But he is the only guy that the Heat brought in that is taller than 6'7". The only question that needs to be answered by any NBA team at this point is, do you have somebody that can beat Nikola Jokic? That is not just me talking as a Nuggets fan. That is me talking as a basketball fan. If you have any other question answered, you are not taking the right test. You are failing on the point of even finding the right paper to read. If you are answering any other question, then am I doing something that is going to stop Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray and that deadly two-man game that they have? If you are not answering that question, your question sheet is wrong, and you are going to fail the test that is the NBA regular season, let alone the NBA postseason. So this team decided after getting mollywopped, just absolutely waxed upside down the court and the other. And I don't care about the Miami stands that want to sit here and try and say that, oh no, we took y'all to the brink. No, y'all were not in the same league as Denver. I expected it to be a dogfight. It really wasn't. There was times that the Nuggets just stopped trying and it allowed Miami to get back into the game. But as soon as they got back into the game, the Nuggets would snap back to reality outside of the one loss that they still almost got, that they would have taken to overtime at least if Jamal Murray wouldn't have missed a shot by half an inch. So again, y'all got a win that took absolutely everything that every player on Miami's roster had, and they still almost blew it at the end. So don't sit here and try and sugarcoat what happened. The Miami Heat never were in that series. Not at any point. Even after that win, like I tried to be nice and I was really nuts. Like, oh, we got a series. I even texted my brother-in-law, telling him, yo, bro, that was a great game. Too bad Murray missed that shot. It could have even been better, et cetera, et cetera. But I was just being nice. And they got worse. It was a miracle that they made it to the finals. And they threw everything into one basket, which was, oh, we're going to get Dame Lillard, and that's going to fix everything. Ignoring the fact that Dame Lillard has beat the Nuggets a total of 3 times in the last 3 years. Ignoring the fact that even when Dame Lillard had his biggest game of the season against the Nuggets, he still lost on a last second three in his face. He was the defender of Jamal Murray when Jamal Murray put a three in to win the game on Portland's court in Portland. Okay, so even if Miami gets Damian Lillard, it changes nothing. They have done nothing but get smaller, older, and slower through this offseason. So Miami, keep putting your hopes on Dame Lillard because you're going to have to give up even more of a very shallow team that's already, barely anything there outside of Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, and you're going to give up even more of that, a good chunk of it, just to get Dame Lillard in the door, and he's supposed to somehow fix it and change the fact that Miami could do absolutely nothing to stop Joker. Jokic was an absolute bully in the paint. And despite all the crap people wanted to talk about Jokic being a terrible defender, Miami was outscored in the paint by an average of 25 points per game. That's insanely bad. So again, if y'all want to give up they've given up Max Strus, they've given up Dave Vincent, Cody Zeller, every player that had anything to do with them even making it to the finals, they got rid of them. And they're going to replace all of that production with one guy that's in his mid 30s and going to give you probably 4 to 5 years at max, and you gave up a bunch of guys that could have given you at least a decade worth of production. Would have any one of them been able to match Lillard? Probably not. But as a whole, will outproduce Lillard by multiples, period. So, just to wrap this up succinctly as possible, if you are hoping and praying for an early and quick resolution to the Dame Lillard saga, buckle up, Buttercups, because it's not going to happen. Plain and simple. This is going to be a long ride. Get ready for it. I hope you got your snacks and your drinks ready because you're going to need a lot of them. And again, stop holding your breath. You're going to suffocate before any of this ends. So let's go ahead and move on from the suffering of Miami Heat fans and the self-inflicted wounds of them and move on to football. Football is back, people. We have football tonight. Believe it or not, we have an NFL football game. It is a preseason game. It is the Hall of Fame game. So you're not going to see any stars. But tonight, we have the Jets and the Browns playing on Peacock and NBC. Those are the two places that you can watch the game tonight. It's Peacock if you are a streamer, and NBC if you are a linear cable subscriber. So, and it actually starts right after we're done here. So after we're done here, wait until we're done. We still got about 40 minutes. So hold your horses, but here in about 40 minutes, you will get your first taste of NFL action. It is the Jets. It is the Browns. It is the insanity that is the Jets offseason, that they are this offseason's media darling. They're the team that went out and got the big-time quarterback in Aaron Rodgers and brought him in and gave him carte blanche that everybody says is absolutely okay and cool for him to have. He made the Jets sign and trade for players that are absolutely non-needed, like Alan Lazard and Randall Cobb. When you have Garrett Wilson and company, like seriously, the double standard that has been handed to the hippie Rodgers and what he's been allowed to do, just because he hasn't been paraded in front of the cameras as much as Denver did with Russell, and maybe he hasn't said the cringeworthy like "Let's ride" mantra or whatever. He's also the quarterback that tried to make a threat to another head coach, talking about keep my coach's name out your mouth and all these other little intricacies we'll call. And then we have, of course, Deshaun Watson and the Browns, one of the more despicable moves of the offseason last season when they went out and traded for Watson and gave him a fully guaranteed contract after everything that happened. I have went over the whole Deshaun Watson situation ad nauseum. If you need my takes, if you haven't heard what I had to say on that, go to the old Breaking Broncos episodes and all that. I have entire episodes where we talk about that. So I'm not going to go too far into the wormhole that is Deshaun Watson and his despicable off-field behavior. And I am a guy that I went ad nauseum about Aaron Rodgers and how I feel about him. I revel in being able to root against Aaron Rodgers and the Jets anytime that I can. I am absolutely happy and wonderfully happy to do so. But when you have to put them up against the Browns and Watson, I don't have a choice but to say I gotta root for the Jets. As much as I want them to fail, as much as I want to see Hackett go out and prove Coach Peyton right for saying the things that he said that Aaron Rodgers said he needed to keep his coach's name out of his mouth for, as much as I would love to see that in every single week going forward, as long as Hackett is employed in New York and Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback for that matter, tonight's one night, even though we're not going to see any of those guys, that just the fact that the Browns did what they did, I believe that they deserve success even less than Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets at this point. So I ask you all. I just gave you my take. I'm picking the Jets. How about you? If you had to choose who to root for, who are you rooting for? Aaron Rodgers and the Jets or Deshaun Watson and the Browns? No judgments here. I would just like to hear what you have to say on that topic. Who is easier to root for or harder, however you want to look at it, the Jets or the Browns? Again, for me, I have to go to the Jets, and this is the only time, probably outside of any AFC West opponent, but outside of there, this is about the only time I'm going to pick the Jets for them to come out and be the one to win. And tonight we're going to see Zach Wilson for the majority of the game is what it seems Robert Saleh is going to do, try and get him some live game reps. We're not going to see, there's not going to be any Aaron Rodgers, no Deshaun Watson. I mean, none of the stars are going to play tonight. Again, this is an extra preseason game essentially. Any team that plays in the Hall of Fame game is playing an extra preseason game. It used to be you were playing 5 with the new rules where week 4 of the preseason is now essentially just an extra bye week. It's only 4, but you're still playing one more game than every other team when it comes to preseason games. That's how the Hall of Fame game works. It's not a substitute for one of your preseason games. It is an add-on and an addition to those preseason games. And no, I'm not popping a beer, but I did realize I didn't pop up on my soda can. So there, that way you know I'm not sitting here promoting things. Browns is easier to root for, just not a Jets fan. I can respect it. Like I said, no judgment. I'm not here to judge what your decision is, but to me, I just can't root for a guy like Watson who essentially did, well, not essentially, he did a lot of really terrible things and got away with it due to technicality. So I'm not a proponent of wishing goodwill on anyone that does not pay for the crimes that they commit. That's just my personal opinion. So again, let's move on from that. Next point of context on NFL training camps is one that seems to be brought up every single year, even though the entire offseason is spent with people screaming at the top of their lungs that the NFL is 100% risk of injury. But yet, every single training camp, when people get injured, It's a problem. It's a big deal. Oh my God, what's going on? What's the problem? Why does every single year the same thing happen? I don't know, because they're playing football at the same time every single year. That's why. Like, it's amazing to me that when it's convenient and you're lazy and you're terrible at your job and you don't know how to come up with inventive ideas for content, you just absolutely talentless hacks of mainstream sports journalism sit here and make mountains out of molehills because, again, you are terrible at your jobs. Just do some basic research, people, and you will see that this year's injuries are no different or no more plentiful than any other year, ever, period. It is not a spike. There is not a spike. Just because Joe Burrow got hurt, just because Jonathan Taylor was put on the pup list, just because a couple of other big names, Cooper Cup just got hurt. My God, people, just because a couple of names that you recognize got hurt does not mean that all of a sudden something's wrong. Oh my God. Stars get hurt every year. Stars get hurt every training camp. Poor Tim Patrick at the Broncos. Second year in a row that he's had a season-ending injury in the first week of training camp. Last year was a torn ACL. This year was a torn Achilles. It happens, people. It's football. It's what happens. And it's amazing to me that all of y'all, again, it's convenient, injuries matter. But when it's inconvenient for your argument, like, say, I don't know, Russell Wilson last year, where he had a knee and a shoulder injury, injuries don't matter. But in training camp, when there's not as many storylines and you lazy jackoffs don't know how to actually come up with something creative and inventive, y'all just make up some BS like this. It is infuriating how ridiculously lazy so many in this industry have become. It is not a difficult thing to come up with content ideas if you are actually talented and creative. I have every single episode I have ever made of any podcast, any show, any radio show, any audio clip, I have sat there and had to decide what things not to put in. I have yet to ever sit there and be like, man, I have absolutely nothing. I can't think of anything. It's unbelievable. There's nothing going on in the entirety of sports for me to talk about that's actually interesting. So let me just make some shiz up. I have never sat there and so I can't. I guess maybe I just can't understand your struggle. Maybe that's my problem. Maybe that's a me problem. I gotta figure that out. But uh, otherwise, man, what is wrong with you people? Why do you have to come up with these ridiculous made up storylines that have nothing to do with sports? I mean, this is just the latest. One of the last most prevalent issues or times this happening was the whole debacle of the MVP debate last year in the NBA, where you ended up having a guy claiming that people were racist with no actual proof or facts or anything to back it up, other than the fact that, hey, most of the writers are white, so, since they're white, they must be racist. Like, come on, people. That is what this type of laziness leads to. Is it leads to storylines and narratives that should have never been discussed in the first place. That's why these things get me so riled up. Like, oh, they're just trying to fill time. Like, okay, so don't be a talentless hack. And if you are, please, by all means, take yourself out of my profession. You're not wanted and you're not needed. We have way too many people that are actually talented, that are actually creative, that should be in those jobs. But because you knew somebody, or because you fleeced some other a person over here, or your daddy was in the industry, or your mommy was in the industry, or uncle or grandpa, or whatever the case, whatever nepotism got you to your place, does not entitle you to the place you are at. If you cannot do this, without creating ridiculous storylines that should have never been created in the first place. Please, by all means, quit, leave. We do not want you. You are not welcome here. I don't know how else to put it, but bluntly, it is pathetic. It is gross, and you end up hurting people in the process. You don't think that that was hurtful for all of those journalists that have done nothing wrong? I'm sure that there's probably a racist or two in there somewhere. That's just how the world works. There are dicks in every walk of life. There are jerks in every walk of life. So to sit here and try and paint with a broad brush because of that minority is absolutely asinine and disingenuous. Stop it. Either quit or learn. One of the two, man. I'm just so over it. So let's go ahead on the topic of Russ. How do you think? Okay, I got a question. Since you're on the topic of Russ, how do you think he's going to look in training camp this year? Now, there's been mixed reports. If you go and you listen to the people that ratted and ran over Russell Wilson at every turn and every possibility that they could, they are saying they're bringing up a one or two bad throws uh, in a practice, which again, the man's learning a brand new offense that requires, timing and all. But forget all of that. He had one or two bad throws, so bad practice, terrible practice. He looks like exactly what we expected. That's what you get from that camp. If you listen to either people that didn't have anything to say about Russell or defended Russell, you hear good things. You hear things about how they're getting in and out of the huddle. I know it sounds simple and that's like football 101, but this is a team that last year couldn't get out of the huddle. I don't know how you're supposed to execute a play when you can't get out of the huddle with the play to begin with. But I digress. Then and they'll also talk about how Russ still has those moments where he'll break the pocket and he'll scramble and there might have been a sack, but he might have been able to get out of it. So it looks like it might be the Russell of old. So really, without being able to get down there yet and see him with my own eyes, I can't really tell you how he's going to be. But from the snippets I've seen, both good and bad, he looks like Russell. He looks like the Russell Wilson we expected we were going to get. He's a slimmed down, quick twitch athlete that if he can learn this offense and he can play within the parameters while also being able to use that athleticism the way that Sean Payton wants him to use it, I think he's going to do very, very well. And I think he has done very, very well in learning a complex offense with a very constrained offseason. This isn't the old school training camps and off seasons where teams had unlimited time and their quarterback could have been in the building since the day that Sean Payton was traded for and looking over film and poring over the playbook with his coach for endless hours. You can't do that anymore. So you have to work within that parameter. Obviously, they probably do some things to get around it. I don't have anything that I can confirm, and even if I did, I wouldn't confirm it because it would get them in trouble. But I'm sure they have ways to get around and get some little extra, but it's not the same as it used to be. So he's learning it on a constrained timeline. As far as everything I've seen and I've heard from actual players, like just canceling out the noise completely from all the pundits and all the jackoffs and talking heads that are running around at all the training camps right now, just listening to the players, listening to the coaches. From what I get, it sounds like we're getting the Russell Wilson of old, that he's, the timing, everything's working out the way that it's supposed to. So, as far as I know, as far as I can tell, everything's going to plan. Yes, has he thrown 3 picks in the first week? Yeah, but 2 of those were to Justin Simmons, the best safety on the planet, and the third was on Caden Stearns, a guy I have been hyping for 2 years now. So it's not like he's going out there and throwing picks. I guess he did throw a pick to, or no, Kwan Williams. Again, another guy we have touted, a guy that won the game against San Francisco last year while intercepting a ball with one hand. Okay, these aren't like he's just throwing interceptions to the rookies and to these undrafted free agents that have no business being on the field. He is throwing interceptions against a defense that is playing a defense they already know. Most of the players on this team know the defense. Almost the entire starting defense is back from a year ago. So the personnel's the same. The play calls are very similar, and most of the calls that aren't similar to the ones they had, they already knew because again, they played under Vance Joseph before, so they know his play calls, they know his verbiage, they know all of those things. So the defense is going to be ahead of the offense. And that's something that nobody is giving any credence to that I've seen so far. So again, Russ, he's had his flaws, he's not been perfect, but nobody has. No, nobody has given the scrutiny that Aaron Rodgers has thrown 3 picks to Sauce Gardner alone in their training camp. Nobody's talking about that, but everybody's talking about the 3 picks over a week to two different guys. That again, one is a perennial Pro Bowler and All Pro, and the other one has the potential to be just as good, if not better, than the other guy. Like, I mean, what are we doing here, people? That's not analysis. That's biased BS. This is exactly what I was talking about just a moment ago about untalented hacks that have no business being in this industry. And it's infuriating to say the least, but I don't want to spend too much time on that. We are halfway through. We need to talk about some more things here in the NFL. Then tonight, remember, right after this, you got the Hall of Fame game. If you're looking for some NFL football fixing, it's again not going to be fully NFL. It's a bunch of third and fourth stringers you're going to be seeing, but it's still NFL talent, still NFL football. And if you're a football nerd like me, you should still enjoy it and be able to see maybe some players on the fringes of both of these rosters in New York and Cleveland. Again, training camp injuries, it is not by any number, by any stretch, an issue, a problem. People get over it. It sucks. It does. It sucks. The last thing we want to see is Joe Burrow out for the entire season or Patrick Mahomes, Lord forbid, or something of that nature happening. We all want to see these players, but it happens. Just because one of those players gets hurt doesn't mean injuries are a problem. Injuries are a part of football. Grow up, put your big boy panties on, and let's move forward. So, um, went over those. Let's go ahead and jump into um, what to look forward to in some NFL training camps. We have some interesting storylines, like we mentioned briefly with Jonathan Taylor going out there and having the debacle that is going on in Indy. Another illustration of the disrespect of running backs and why I have screamed to the top of my lungs on any avenue I can. Mama, don't let your boys grow up to be running backs ever. Period. Just don't. The NFL has absolutely lost all respect and care for the running back position. They view every single player, not just like I used to think it was just like, okay, don't pay regular guys. Like, don't go out and pay uh, like your Kareem Hunts or somebody of that nature. Like, don't pay them a lot of money. But if you have a Saquon Barkley, an Adrian Peterson, a Christian McCaffrey, a transcendent talent, you must pay them. Well, the NFL is like, nah, bro, we're not even going to pay them. Like, yes, Christian got his, but I think at this point, all the writing's on the wall for that being the last big contract. I mean, outside of maybe Bijan Robinson down the line, if he's able to live up to the hype of being a top 10 pick, but outside of that, there's no end in sight to this depressing running back market. And to see the way that JT has been absolutely disrespected in Indy, they're like, yeah, you went out there and ran for 2,000 yards, had almost 3,000 total yards for us the year before last. But last year, you got hurt and you kind of sucked. And so we're not going to pay you what you're worth because we think you're kind of run down. And then when he gets bad, he's like, nah, bro, I'm not just taking a contract that you're throwing at me. Trade me. Well, then Jim Irsay, who is an absolutely inept owner, like, he might be worse than his dad. It's I can't believe that we're saying this. The man that was drunk that drunkenly moved the Baltimore Colts in the middle of the night is actually a potentially better owner than his son. Like, that's insane to think. But it looks like his son's just as much of a drunk as he is and makes even dumber decisions than his daddy has. Um, Without JT, the Indianapolis Colts are going to be terrible offensively. As much as you might like Anthony Richardson and all y'all with your AR-15 thinking that you're cute and they're lame. It's really, really lame, by the way. But anyways, move on from that. They will be terrible. Anthony Richardson is not a quarterback any more than, oh my god, I can't remember. I can't believe Justin Fields. I almost forgot his name. The quarterback of the Chicago Bears, Justin Fields. He is a less accurate version of Cam Newton, a less accurate version, or maybe about as accurate version of Justin Fields. Him and Justin Fields are about what and what. He's just a little bit bigger and a little bit faster than Justin Fields. He's a running back playing the quarterback position. I would honestly, I would bet more money on Taysom Hill being a better quarterback after all that we've seen from Taysom than Anthony Richardson. And I haven't even seen that much. Everybody's excited about all the things that don't matter about you being a quarterback. I don't care how fast you can run if you can't throw the ball. Like, it's like all those things are great. Like, Lamar Jackson's great, Kyler Murray's great, Russell Wilson's great, Patrick Mahomes are all great with their feet and their arm. It is not an either or proposition with them. And that's the difference. If you're a quarterback that can run, great. But if you are a running back that can kind of throw, that will never work in the NFL. It'll work in college. We've seen it work time and time again with the Tim Tebows and Achilles Smiths and et cetera, go down the line all throughout history in college football. It works in college because not the other team's not as good as you. In the NFL, everybody's good. So when you have a weak link, it is magnified to how bad it is. And if y'all hear the song of the people of the Huskies, I'm sorry, but y'all gonna have to deal with that. We have Huskies, and if you hear them, too bad. I don't care. Anyways, um, last thing that we're going to talk about today is going to be winners and losers of the MLB trade deadline. I'm just going to give you a couple real winners and a couple real losers. Really, my top two winners are going to be the Los Angeles Angels, not so much because they just went out and made blockbuster move after blockbuster move. They made really, really good moves. But the fact that they did not just give up, sell Shohei Ohtani for the maximum number of prospects and that they could get, and they went all in. They went all in. They got another starting candidate for him. They got a couple extra bats from the Rockies and C.J. Cron and Randall Grichuk. And their bullpen has been better than they expected. I love the fact that they're going all in. And then the Houston Astros being able to go out and bring Justin Verlander back for a fraction of what they would have had to pay him in free agency. Yes, they ended up giving up their top two outfield prospects, but when you're talking about future Hall of Famers that are still, even though they're 40, pitching some of the best ball they've ever pitched in their life, just as a few months after winning another Cy Young Award, you can't fault them. Houston Astros, Los Angeles Angels, I think are going to be two of the teams to worry about. The Rangers are another team that I really liked what they did, going out, getting Max Scherzer and shoring up some points in their rotation, their bullpen, and their lineup. And they're going all in with a team that's already raking up at their lineup stacked. Their starting rotation now has some real big meaty players at the top with Eovaldi and Scherzer and that, and Gray, hanging out in the middle of that rotation. John Gray, that is, former Rocky. The Rangers are looking really, really nice. I think that they're possibly the team to beat at this point, um, and might be the biggest winners of the trade deadline. They gave up some things like Acuna Jr.'s little brother and things of that nature to get where they are. But I think they've played the waiting game with prospects enough, bringing along Josh Young, um, Jonah Heim, uh, Adelise Garcia, etc. They've done their due diligence on building that farm system and bringing up, they went out and got Corey Seager in the offseason. Again, he's proving to be worth every single penny. I really like the way that they're built. So for me, the Rangers are the team to beat in the AL. And then when it comes to the NL, that's going to be somewhere between, man, there's just not nearly as much depth in the NL. You want to say the Dodgers, but that starting rotation gives you some pause once you get into the postseason. The Braves seem like probably the most stacked team, and I liked a couple of the moves that they made to try to shore up their bullpen as well, which is really about one of their only weak links. So to me, probably the Braves and the Rangers are my favorites in the AL and NL respectively. Um, what do you think though? What do you all believe are the winners and losers of the deadline? Again, those are my winners. The losers, I absolutely hate seeing the Mariners just give up when they're only a half game out of a postseason slot. That was gross to me. Um, as much as I like Jerry Dipoto from when he was a player with the Rockies to what he's done as a GM at multiple stops, always seems to take small market teams and make them uberly competitive, builds up great, strong farm systems. This is the first time I've really looked at what he's done and just been like, man, why would you do that? Maybe he sees a bigger picture than me. He obviously knows his roster better than I ever could. Maybe he seen some holes that I didn't in the farm system, and so he went out, gave up his closer, his best starter, one of his better bats, um, and just got some young kids that have potential, but they're not going to help the team anytime soon. So it wasn't even like a retooling where it's like, okay, we'll get a couple of close to MLB ready players that can help us next year, and we'll go from being this fringe contender to being a legitimate contender. It really seems like waving the white flag when you're just so close. And every baseball fan, fandom, and really just any sports fandom whatsoever, deserves for their team to give their best effort every single season, let alone one where you're over the halfway point and only a half game back, and you're just going to sit out there and give up. I mean, you have teams like the Diamondbacks that went out and made aggressive moves, and they're way farther out in the playoff picture than the Mariners are. So to see them just give up, the Mets are probably the biggest loser. I mean, this is the most expensive team in sports franchise history that is now at the halfway point, selling off everything of value, and they're not even just retooling. They literally told their two best arms, Scherzer and Justin Verlander, that we're not only going to not compete this year, they're going to suck again next year, and that they're looking for somewhere in 25 or 26 being when they actually contend again. So they are in full sell off mode. I mean, you're going to see this offseason, you're probably going to see Pete Alonso go. You're going to see Brandon Nimmo, who just got signed to a long, big contract this past offseason to stay in New York. He's probably going to end up getting traded. You're going to see this is just the tip of the iceberg with Verlander and Robertson and Scherzer all getting dealt out of Queens. That is just the beginning, people. That is just the beginning. So those are my winners. Those are my losers. Who are yours? Again, leave them down in the comments. Would love to hear what you have to say on who you believe were the winners, losers. Maybe even give me who you think are your best AL and NL clubs. The way that I did, we can have that discussion too. Would absolutely love it. Make sure you go down in the description. All the social links are there, just like my Twitter feed is right here up underneath me at Dan Wetstein II. And I just realized how big this is. I apologize, guys. You're supposed to see all of that. I don't know how that got so big. But yes, that is, make sure you go check us out, e5280sports.com, where you'll get my articles and this podcast along with all the rest in the E5280 Sports Radio catalog. Make sure you go ahead and check out all of their socials. Again, those are down in the description as well as everything that is The Answer is 42 and me, your host, Dan Wetstein II. Just going over no new questions, no new subjects or anything to go over. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this up here. As always, make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons, all the red buttons, launch the news. That way you can clear the path for us to bring you the news the way you deserve it, which is to be enriched and not enraged. So for E5280 Sports, and the answer is 42. Don't question